They say a person can freeze to death even in the middle of a sweltering July. I know this because I've lived in a permafrost for 18 years. Happy anniversary, Susan, my husband Michael says. His voice is smooth, professional, the kind he uses for board meetings. He slides a small velvet box across the mahogany table of the city's most expensive restaurant. To anyone watching, we are the gold standard of marriage. A successful architect and a dedicated teacher. Celebrating nearly 2 decades of unwavering loyalty, I open the box. A diamond necklace catches the light, cold and brilliant. It's beautiful, I whisper. It suits you, he replies, his eyes as vacant as an empty hallway. I reach out, my fingers trembling, hoping for a brief brush against his hand. A spark, a sign of life. But he pulls back with practiced precision to sip his wine. He hasn't touched me since the summer of 2008. Not a hug, not a hand on my shoulder, not even a casual bump in the kitchen. We share a mortgage, a last name, and a daughter. But we are two ghosts haunting the same hallways. The silence isn't just quiet. It's a physical weight. A suffocating ice that started the day he walked into our bedroom and found me with someone else. He didn't scream. He didn't leave. He simply turned off the heat, and I've been shivering ever since. That it wasn't a monster that broke my marriage. It was a slow, creeping loneliness. By the spring of 2008, Michael and I had become a set of parallel lines, moving in the same direction but never intersecting. He was buried in blueprints, his mind always at a construction site, while I was left in a house that felt too large for 3 people. Then came Ethan. He was the landscape architect for the new park project at my school. He didn't just look at me, he observed me. "You look like you're carrying the weight of the world, Susan," he whispered one afternoon by the rose bushes. That was the crack in the dam. It started with coffee, then late-night emails, and finally the afternoon that shattered everything. That I thought Michael was in Dubai for a conference. The house was quiet, the air thick with the scent of Ethan's cologne. When the bedroom door creaked open, I expected the wind. Instead, I saw Michael. He didn't roar. He didn't throw Ethan out. He stood there, his face a pale static mask of pure calculation. He looked at my tangled hair, then at the man in our bed, and finally at the wedding photo on the nightstand. "The guest room is made up, Ethan," Michael said, his voice terrifyingly level. "You should leave before the neighbors see you." As the door closed, the temperature in the room dropped 30 degrees. I tried to speak, to beg, to explain the void in my heart, but Michael just stared at the wall behind me. That was the last time he ever looked me in the eye with anything resembling heat. The original sin wasn't just my infidelity. It was the moment Michael decided that living in a frozen lie was a better revenge than a clean break. The transition from a wife to a roommate happened so gradually I almost didn't notice the walls closing in. Michael never moved out, but he vacated every emotional space we once shared. He moved his clothes to the guest room that very night, and the silence became our third tenant. Breakfast became a mechanical ritual. He would set the table for 3, himself, our daughter Maya, and me. But he spoke only to Maya. "Did you finish your project, honey?" he'd ask, his voice warm and paternal. If I tried to join in, suggesting a weekend trip or a movie, the warmth evaporated instantly. He wouldn't argue. He would simply stand up, rinse his plate, and leave the room as if a stray breeze had just passed through the skin. Hunger was the hardest part. I'd watch couples at the grocery store, a hand on a waist or a casual brush of shoulders, and feel a physical ache in my chest. Once in the hallway, I accidentally bumped into him. I reached out to steady myself against his arm, but he flinched, a sharp, violent recoil as if my skin were acid. "Excuse me," he said, his eyes fixed on a point 3 inches above my head. In that moment, I realized he wasn't just angry. He had turned his heart into a fortress of ice, and I was the prisoner left outside to starve. The revelation didn't come with a scream, it came with a click. Last month, while Michael was at a week-long symposium in Seattle, the basement flooded. As I moved his old filing cabinets to higher ground, one drawer caught. It wasn't filled with blueprints or tax returns. It was a leather-bound journal, dated 2008. I expected a diary of his pain. Instead, I found a ledger of my life. For 18 years, Michael hadn't just been ignoring me. He had been documenting me. Every time I cried in the shower, every phone call I made to my mother, every extra hour I worked at the school, It was all there, noted in his precise architectural script, but the ink turned blacker on the final pages. I found bank statements I didn't recognize. He had been funneling money into a private account for a decade. More devastating was a series of emails printed out. He had been the anonymous tipster who cost me my promotion to principal in 2015, citing moral instability to the board. He wasn't just a victim of my betrayal. He was the architect of my isolation. The freezer wasn't a place where he hid from his hurt. It was a cage he had meticulously built to ensure I remained too broken, too poor, and too lonely to ever leave him. The man I thought was suffering in silence was actually a warden, watching me through the bars of a life he had quietly sabotaged from the shadows. The day Michael returned from Seattle, the air in the house was different. It wasn't just cold anymore. It was thin, like the atmosphere on a mountain peak where nothing can survive. I stood in the foyer, the leather-bound ledger heavy in my hands. As he set his suitcase down, his eyes performed their usual trick, glancing past me as if I were a smudge on the glass. "Michael," I said. For the first time in 18 years my voice didn't tremble. It was as flat and hard as his own. "I found the basement files." He froze. The silence that followed wasn't the usual peaceful vacuum. It was the sound of a structural failure. He turned and for a split second the mask slipped. I didn't see a grieving husband. I saw a man whose secret project had been exposed. I thought I was paying a debt. I whispered, stepping toward the door. "I thought your silence was your pain. But it was just your hobby." I didn't wait for his rebuttal. I didn't need an apology that would never come. I walked out into the bright afternoon sun, leaving the door wide open. As I stepped onto the pavement, the warmth hit my skin. Not just the heat of the day, but the terrifying, beautiful realization of my own agency. The ice didn't melt. I simply stepped out of the freezer. For 18 years I was a prisoner of a shadow. Today I was finally just a woman walking down the street, feeling the sun on my face for the very first time.